Welcome to This Week in Education Law, where I share up-to-date court decisions from the perspectives of educational administrators and policymakers. This is episode 40. In this episode, I'll introduce a recent case about the integration of LGBT-inclusive books into the Montgomery County Public Schools English Language Arts curriculum in the state of Maryland. Let's first look at the background of the case. In October 2022, the Montgomery County Board of Education, through its regular curriculum adoption process, approved a group of LGBTQ-inclusive books as part of the English Language Arts curriculum for use in the school district. I'll call those books storybooks. According to the school district, the books are used to assist students with mastering reading concepts like answering questions about characters, retelling key events about characters in a story, and drawing inferences about story characters based on their actions. The books as a whole express their authors' views on sexual orientation and gender identity by portraying homosexual, transgender, and non-binary characters in different situations. For example, one of the approved books is called Cried Puppy. It is the only book approved for pre-kindergarten and Head Start classrooms. In this book, it tells the story of a family's puppy lost during an LGBTQ pride parade, with pages highlighting different alphabet letters and associated items like drag king, drag queen, leather, lip ring, and underwear. Another book titled Born Ready, the true story of a boy named Penelope, was approved for use in kindergarten through grade 5. In this book, the main character is a biological girl who becomes upset when others say, "You look like your sister," because inside I am a boy. When I close my eyes, I'm a boy. Penelope's family is supportive and makes a plan to tell everyone that Penelope is a boy, even if it doesn't make sense to them, because not everything needs to make sense. This is about love. The Associate Superintendent of Curriculum and Instructional Programs for the school district stated that to prepare principals and teachers for the introduction of the storybooks into the curriculum, the school system provided guidance and training opportunities, including statements that the storybooks were not planned to be part of explicit instruction on gender identity and sexual orientation in elementary school, and that no student or adult is asked to change how they feel about those issues. Teachers were instead expected to incorporate the storybooks into the curriculum in the same way that other books are used, namely to put them on the shelf for students to find on their own, to recommend a book to a student who would enjoy it, to offer the books as an option for literature circles, book clubs, or paired reading groups, or to use them as a read aloud for all students in the classroom. Although the adoption of the storybooks came with the expectation that teachers would incorporate them into the classroom environment in some way, the associate superintendent stated that the decision about which book to use and how they'd be used in an individual classroom is left to each teacher's discretion. However, teachers cannot elect not to use the storybooks at all. As you can imagine, the rollout of the storybooks was met with a lot of controversy. Concerns were raised by teachers, administrators, and parents about the age appropriateness and religious implications of the content. Several elementary school principals signed on to a document that identified numerous instances in the storybooks of age-inappropriate content, such as words being used without definitions, inherent problems with depicting young children falling in love with another individual regardless of orientation, and the overall difficulty of some of the concepts for young children to grasp. Initially, parents were allowed to opt their children out of using those storybooks in line with the county's guidelines for respecting religious diversity, which provided for reasonable adjustments to accommodate religious beliefs. However, in March 2023, without any explanation, the school board abruptly reversed this policy, eliminating the opt-out option. What motivated the abrupt policy change is largely unknown, but the associate superintendent's statement indicated several after-the-fact explanations. First, the original notice and opt-out policy had led to high student absenteeism, and it cited concerns from principals and teachers regarding the feasibility of accommodating the growing number of opt-out requests without causing significant disruptions to the classroom environment and undermining the school system's educational mission. Second, allowing notice and an opt-out option placed too great a burden on school staff charged with, first, remembering which student could be present during lessons involving the storybooks or otherwise be permitted access to those books. And second, developing alternative plans for those students who could not be present across a range of language arts activities. Third, the school board was concerned about stigmatizing and isolating individuals whose circumstances were reflected in the storybooks. This policy change led to a legal challenge from parents of different religions, such as Catholic and Muslim. The parents argue that the lack of notice and opt-out options violated their rights to the free exercise of religion and due process. It's important to point out that the parents' lawsuit does not seek to ban the storybooks, but rather demands the right to be informed and to opt their children out of lessons involving those storybooks. They argue that the school board's policy infringes on their religious duty to guide their children's upbringing and education. The district court denied the parents' request for preliminary injunction, which is a court order that stops the school district from implementing the no opt-out policy until the case is decided. The court found that the parents did not prove that their religious or due process rights were being violated. The parents then appealed, but the Fourth Circuit Court upheld the lower court's decision. The court pointed out that the parents failed to show any direct or indirect coercion that would violate their religious rights. They emphasized that parents can still teach their children their religious beliefs at home and noted that there was no evidence that students were being forced to agree with the content of the storybooks. The court ruled in favor of the school district, not because of the merit of the policy, but because the parents failed to provide evidence. The court concluded that the parents had not come forward with sufficient evidence of a cognizable burden on their free exercise rights to satisfy the requirements of a free exercise claim. Here, a cognizable burden means a significant and recognizable impact that can be evaluated by the court. The court acknowledged the parents' concern that the storybooks could be used in ways that would confuse and mislead children, and that discussions relating to their content could be used to indoctrinate their children into espousing views contrary to their religious beliefs. However, none of that was verified by the limited evidence before the court. Here, the court is looking for concrete, specific evidence demonstrating how the use of storybooks in classrooms imposed a significant and recognizable impact, that is, the cognizable burden on the parents and their children's free exercise of religion. Here are examples of the types of evidence that could help parents substantiate their claims. Detailed lesson plans and classroom activities that show how the storybooks are integrated into the curriculum. testimonies from teachers explaining their use of the storybooks and any related classroom discussions could offer insights into the practical implementation in the classrooms. Moreover, training materials given to teachers would review the guidance they received regarding the storybooks' use in classrooms, providing copies of discussion guides or talking points given to the teachers, along with transcripts or summaries of actual classroom conversations, would demonstrate the nature of the discussions surrounding the storybooks. Evidence showing how exposure to the storybooks has changed students' behavior or beliefs in ways that conflict with their religious upbringing would highlight the impact on religious exercise. Expert testimonies explaining the potential influence on young children's religious beliefs could also be compelling. Finally, official school policies outlining the expected use of the storybooks, along with statements from school administrators explaining the purpose and objectives, would clarify the intended application and context in the curriculum. What can educational administrators learn from this case? One important issue in this case is the importance of parental involvement in policy changes, particularly those that may be contentious. In this case, the administrators should have engaged with parents early and frequently when the storybooks were introduced. This means not only informing parents about the new materials, but also explaining the educational objectives behind their inclusion, the specific ways in which they would be used in the classroom, and the benefits they were expected to bring to students' learning experiences. Moreover, the initial policy included an opt-out option for parents who had concerns about the storybooks, but this option was later abruptly revoked without any explanation or consultation. This sudden reversal of the policy caused significant friction and contributed to the tension that eventually led to this lawsuit. Establishing and maintaining clear, reasonable opt-out options for concerned parents could help balance educational goals with parental rights. The alternatives should be communicated transparently, with a clear rationale provided for any changes to the policies. By actively involving parents in the discussion and the decision-making process, educational administrators can build trust and cooperation. This involvement may include holding informational sessions, sending detailed letters or emails, and creating opportunities for parents to provide feedback and ask questions. Ensuring that parents feel heard and respected can prevent misunderstandings and conflicts, ultimately creating a more supportive and collaborative educational environment.